Hi, welcome to the Mia Azure Developer channel. My name is Taz Barbati. I work as an Azure GTM Manager for Developer Audience. Today we have a very special guest, Mert Yeter. Mert, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Tasvar. My name is Mert Yeter. I have been an Azure MVP for 2 years, and I am working as a software architect at 360.net. And I am trying to be active in Microsoft community, and also I like make contribution on open source, and that's me.
Okay, great, Mert. So I saw you at the Developer Summit. I wanted to ask you this question because you were talking about it. What is a GitHub Codespaces?
Okay. Before explaining code spaces, I want to give you an example. If you have experience with remote containers
Mhm.
in WSL, you are familiar with code spaces because they are very similar. In remote container in VSL, we run our code in a container, not in Windows, in VSL in a container. And in code spaces, we run our code in a container, but this time it is working on GitHub, not our local computer. And it gives us lots of features, like I don't need a full development environment installed on my computer. I don't need any IDE. I need only a browser, and I don't need to install lots of things in my computer. And these are very important if you are setting up a new development environment or if you do context switching. And I want to show you how it works. And you can use your browser or you can use VS Code if you don't like to write code on browser. On browser version, it is the similar experience on the VS Code. If you are familiar with the web editor, it is the same experience. And there is an Linux virtual machine,
Mhm.
and there is a container inside that machine, and they are all running on GitHub. And inside that container, there is a clone of your repository and necessary language like C Sharp, Python, or other languages you select. And also you can select your tooling for your needs. For example, you can install some nice GitHub extension. Also, you can install GitHub Copilot if you want. And before switching to demo, I want to share the resources.
Mhm.
You can scan this QR code with your phone camera and access to GitHub Codespace documentation.
So let's jump into the demo now then.
Okay. Let's imagine I need to make a small change like configuration, HTML or CSS on my repository, but I don't have any development machine. So I have only my smartphone or tablet or any device with a browser. I open my repository on GitHub and I press dot on my keyboard, and the URL change from github.com to github.dev, and I can see the web editor. It looks like VS Code. I can make small changes on the editor. For example, let's add space, and I can see my change, and I can commit my change. But there is a missing part here. I cannot see any terminal screen. Let's discard this change, or I cannot debug my code. For example, what if I need to make a bigger change and need to debug it to see if it's working? I cannot do it on web editor, so I need to open a code space. So let's go back to my repository. And I'll click the green code button. that we download our repository or clone our repository on this button, and I can say Codespaces tab. I will click the create Codespaces on main. Now it's setting up my Codespace. It is using the default image. Now my account has built and now it's connecting. Yes, in a few seconds my Codespaces is ready. I can see the terminal. Also, it is very look like VS Code. So let's click on debug to see if I can debug it on Codespaces. Okay, I get an error. There is no core CLR installed. So let's close this and I go to extensions, and actually it is asking for the C# extension. Okay, I'll install the required extension here. And it's ready. Let's go back to debug. Let's close this one. Okay. Now it's open a new tab and I see a bad gateway. This is normal because it is running on a container and it is not ready yet. Let's go back to my Codespaces and I can see a notification. So there is in another section here. Let's go to ports. There are two ports available, one for HTTP and other for HTTPS. Let's have a look at the context menu, and there are some options here: open a browser, preview in editor, and set a port label. I can give a friendly name to my port. Set label and update dev container JSON, which I will mention in a few minutes. I can copy that address. I can change port visibility. There are two port visibility options. First one and the default one is private. When I get this local address URL and paste to another browser or use it on another computer, I need to log into my GitHub account to open it. If I want to share it with my colleagues or friends to look at my application, I need to set it to public. And also I can change the port protocol. Default one is HTTP, but I need to make it HTTPS because this is the HTTPS port. And the other options is stop forwarding and forward any port. Let's change it to HTTPS. Okay, now I go back to my application tab and refresh. Okay, now I can see my application. So let's try to debug, and I will put a breakpoint on home controller. Let's put it on index and click home. Okay, I can see the breakpoint here on the tab. And as you can see, I can debug my application like on my local computer. Okay, what if you don't want to use browser and use a local VS Code? I have a good news for you. You can use your local VS Code instance to connect to Codespaces. Let's have a look at how we can do it. Okay, I'll open a VS Code instance and I'll go to Remote Explorer extension. As I logged in with my GitHub account, I can see my Codespaces. I can see the name and the details here. So I will connect the Codespaces with this icon. And now it's setting up a remote connection. And let's open the terminal. Okay, it opens my source code. I can see the terminal, but all of them are in Codespaces, not on my computer. Let's try a debug here. It opens a new browser tab and I'll continue. And now it's running on Codespaces. I'll say it again, not on my computer, but you can see in the URL a local host address and a local port. It is the actual port forwarding here. It is like the Kubernetes port forwarding. And it is running on the remote container. Okay, I created a default image, but what if I want to modify that image and also I want to pre-install my extension, because it is not a good way to install extensions again and again after each time you create the Codespace image. So I have another good news for you. It is very easy to create a dev container JSON, which contains the related configuration, and you already seen it on port context menu. And let's press Ctrl Shift P and open Visual Studio search bar, and as you can see there's a dev containers section, and I will add a new dev container configuration file. It's asking me for a definition. I will select C#, but you can select another options regarding to your needs. And asking for a .NET version and Node.js. And now it's time to select additional features. I need Azure CLI, for example, maybe GitHub CLI, Git, and PowerShell. I say OK. And ask for a Git version. I select latest, PowerShell also latest. Okay, it creates the folder .dev container, and inside there is an dev container JSON file and a Docker file. In Docker file, as you know, we can change the configuration of the image, and in dev container JSON we can change the configuration for our development environment. So you can see there's an extension defined here. You can define multiple extensions, and if you wonder where we can find these extension names, I will switch back to browser and go to Visual Studio Marketplace. Okay, let's search for C#. Okay, you can use the item name here on the dev container JSON files. So let's go back to VS Code. Also, you can see the features. I'll select here the feature name and the version. I'll select 4 features, and I will find that features installed when I create the container from this configuration file. So let's go back to my GitHub repository, and this is my repository. I'll select the container, and there are two different folders. You can create multiple the container folders for your multiple different instances. For example, if you are working on Azure, you can create and configuration for Azure. For example, in this configuration, I installed Azure CLI, and for AWS, I installed AWS CLI. The important part is GitHub cannot get configuration for more in the second level. The configuration folders must be in the first level, like this. And I will go back to my repository, and this time I will not select the default one. Select the three-dot menu and new with options. I select this one. Asking for my branch. I have only main branch right now. And the dev container configuration, you can still use the default one or select the configuration you have created. I select Azure, and you can change your region, and also you can change your machine type. I have only one defined right now, and if you create Codespaces, it will create the predefined Codespace, and you can use all your defined extensions and features in that Codespace.
Great, Mert. I learned quite a lot today, actually. Thank you so much, Mert.
You are welcome. That's right. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.